Okay mense, so ons pad, I'm going to talk English for this. We've got phase 1, phase 2. We start with phase 2. Phase 2 is the program development part, which most important part is the database, and then from there the GUI design and all that I asked you to do. But our place now is we want to do phase 1. So I think when we started the pad, I explained to you phase 1 in real life happens first. But for us, it's easier to start with phase 2 first. Phase 1 is the planning phase. So you've got the problem. Now you must plan on how will you fix this problem. Your problem would be the SPCA got to you and said the system is not working because of XYZ or whatever the reason might be. So if you look on page 5 of the PET book, your phase 1 is 48 marks. So it's about 50, roundabout. And phase 2 is 86. And then there's a general final product and impression, 16 marks, gives you 150 marks. So phase 1 is a third, 33% of this project. So we went through the topic, and your scenario is a non-profit organization. So that would be the SPCA or cancer or whatever. But then you have to help them with something they're doing. Alright, so that's our topics. So you would have chosen one of them. Then they just tell you the malpractice is if you copy from somebody else. Okay, it must be your own project. And then for your phase 1, you can, from page 9, they explain to you what needs to be done. So you can go there and read what's expected. For me, it's easier to just work with the rubric itself. So the rubric will sort of guide us as to what we need to do. So the first part of the rubric is the scenario scope. Alright, so then our first part, they talk about the scenario or scope. They say plus minus 200 words in brackets. So that's just an estimate. If it's 100 words, can you get 4 out of 4 for 100 words? Most probably. Can you get 4 out of 4 for 500 words? Probably. You probably had a lot of extra stuff that was not required. So you're not going to lose marks if you go longer. Okay, so you don't need to worry about the marks. And if you're shorter, you also don't need to worry. The only thing is if you're shorter, most probably you didn't say everything you should have said. And if you went longer, most probably you said lots of unnecessary stuff. But so it's just an idea. So the idea of the 200 is just to give you a guide. It's a paragraph. 200 words typed is like a quarter of a page. So it's not a lot that's required. But then on the left hand side, they give you 4 things. First one, the topic is clearly stated. So your topic would be staff management program for SPCA, or donations program for SPCA. Some clear, like one sentence thingy, just saying this program is for that company to help them with that. So it's a staff for cancer, or donations for cancer, or duty roster for SPCA, or whatever. So one sentence explaining which company and what are you going to do for them, type of thing. Second bullet, a thorough description of what the problem or task involves, and then purpose in brackets. So with this one, a thorough description of what the problem or task involves. So what was the problem? So in a few sentences, 2 or 3 sentences, you just say SPCA always used a manual system. They used a book to record when people do, but then the book gets wet or gets lost or misplaced, and then nobody knows what's happening. Or donations, SPCA also always just allowed donations to go into the bank account, but then they couldn't control nicely about what funds they've got or whatever. So you sort of just in a few sentences explain to me what is the problem that happened at that company, why they are asking you to do this program. So most common answers there or problems would be they're using a manual system and they want to have it electronic. or they've got an electronic system but doesn't have these features, or something like that. Okay, then the third thing, describe a possible solution for the problem task. So then in the next few sentences, please put them in this sequence. Put the problem task first, and then or the topic, and then the problem, and now a possible solution. So there you'll say, my program will allow the manager to sign in, and he can allocate which employees must work in which positions. That will be displayed, so when the employee comes, he can sign in and then see. So you'll sort of give me an explanation of what your program will do to solve that problem. Sort of. And then the last one, a brief description of the scope. Now scope is, I want to say, like, what is the boundaries of your program. So you will say, problem was, this is a staff program for SPCA. So problem was, everything was manual. So your solution, you're going to have it electronic, where the manager can choose, and then the people can sign in and see where they have to work. So your scope will be, you will not manage anything with the animals. So you sort of say which things somebody would think you do, because if you think SPCA, you think animals. But now your program is not going to do anything with the animals. So then you'll say there, your program will not manage the animals or any of those things. Your program will only look at employees, where their duty loads, and where they work, when they work, and things like that. So scope is sort of, what will your program not do with what it does. So you'll just add some things. My program will not do this. Okay, and then if you've got all 4 of those things, you get 4 out of 4. Okay, then the next part is user requirements. So you'll see there's 3 things. State who the users are. Now for this second one, it is nice to work in a table form. So to have a column for the administrator, or the manager, or the boss, or whatever. So you need to have at least 2 different users. So you can have one for like the administrator or boss or whatever, the person that can do everything, sort of. And then you've got another one where staff members or public or employees or whatever can sign in, and then the things they can do. So you'll say, my 2 users will be either the manager or employee. So that's your 2 users. Then they say, the role, activity, and limitations of the user. So at administrator, you'll say, he can see all the employees, he can assign duties, he can delete employees, add employees, change employees, view all employees. So you'll sort of list all the things that the manager can do. And then by the employee side, you'll say employee can only see his own detail. He can only change his own detail, but he cannot remove himself. He cannot see anybody else. He cannot change anybody else's information. He can only see his own duty roster, not other people's duty roster, and so forth. So you'll have your 2 users on top, and then underneath, like in bullet form, you can just say, this user can do these things, but not this, and this user can do these things, but not this. So normally the easiest way is you'll have your administrator that can do everything, or the boss, and then you'll have public or employees or staff that can only do certain things. Alright, so that is that one. So if you've got a role, activity, limitations of at least 2 different types of users, and it's well documented, neat, and to the point, you get 4 out of 4. Okay. The next one, a diagrammatical representation of the design and flow of events when the program is used. So for 4 out of 4, an excellent attempt to show all the sequences of all steps and flow of events when the program is executed with no shortcomings. So the best to do with this one is you want to show all possible things that would happen. So what I mean with that is, if the administrator signs in, you can say he can click the button add user. That will take him to this screen. He'll complete all these buttons, he'll click confirm, and then you'll see the new user added. Then he can click the back button, then he gets back to the main screen. So sort of with blocks or screenshots, with flow of arrows, you can just show if this button is clicked, it goes to this screen. If this button is clicked, it goes to that screen. If that button is clicked, it goes back to that screen. So if you can have screenshots with your whole program, and then you can use in Word, you've got those, those arrows you can point with. You can do it in Paint as well, or any program you want to. But a good way to do this is if you take screenshots of all your GUIs, you can make it a bit smaller, but still visible. Maybe change it to landscape, the Word page, and then use arrows from this one to that, and from that one to that, and arrow back again. So that's literally all you have to do here. Like when the buttons are clicked, how it flows from one place to the next. Alright, so if you show every button where it goes in a nice flow, logical flow, how all of them are interconnected, you get 4 out of 4. Okay, then the next part, they say data structures, and the first one is the database design. So there are 4 things. All fields relevant. So that you don't have a field that's not necessary. You had a random field there that nobody's going to use. Like let's say you've got the staff table, and then you've got a field Rappi team supported. Okay, we really don't care if our staff members. Okay, some people do care, but majority of companies don't care who they support. Alright, so all relevant fields. The type and size of fields are well chosen. So if you've got an age field, that it's not string, must be an integer. If you've got current, like salary, that it's currency and not just int or string. So well chosen field types and the sizes. Remember I showed you, like especially when you've got text, it automatically it's by 255 is the field size. You must make it smaller. Like a name, you'll never get a name that's 255 characters long. I think the longest name might be like 50 characters or something. Even if it might be shorter, but so make it shorter. Okay, don't leave it normal. A relational table, it must relational. Relational just means that 2 of your tables are linked with each other. You know, primary key, foreign key. Okay, and then normalized. Normalized just means that the tables are created properly. Normalization we'll do later. But if you're not sure, that's why I asked. You're more than welcome to ask me anytime. Sir, this is my tables. Is it right? Yes, no, and then I'll just help you with that. But an unnormalized table would be something if you've got staff details and medical aid details all in one table. Then it might not be. So your medical aid details you want in a medical aid table and staff details in a staff table. Right, then that will give you 4 out of 4. Then class description and class diagram. So with this one, there's 4 marks for this. And class is the OOP that we're doing now. So if you can sort of say that you're going to have a class with these methods, then you can get another 4 marks. The next one, text files and array, advanced programming concepts. So excellent and relevant description of use of text files and a good application of an array, advanced programming concepts described. So to get 4 out of 4 for this one, you must use text files appropriately. So remember, text files ideas that I had for you was to either use the help features to put the help messages in a text file maybe, or the other option to maybe do login details of the people that can log in and stuff. You can put that in text files. Using the second option, it could help you with the arrays part, where as soon as you read the person's username and password and maybe the last time he logged in, you can store that in an array to then use throughout the program. So then you can, but you need to have an array and use it somehow, and you must have text files and use it somehow. So in this case, you just in a paragraph, you're just going to write me, you're going to have a text file that stores this information. And you can maybe have a sample of how it's going to look. And you're going to say you're going to have arrays that's going to store these things, and this is the size of the arrays. So you must literally just in a paragraph tell me where you're going to use text files and where you're going to use arrays. And then you'll get that 4 marks. With each of these sections, please, when you write me this document, so this is just a Word document. You're going to give me one Word document with all of this inside. But please do it the same, follow the rubric. Do the topic, then the description, then the topic, the description, then do the user requirements table, then do the navigation flow, then do the database structure, then do the classes, then do the text files, and so forth. So if you do it in this, it's easier for me to mark, it's easier for you to make sure that you've got everything you needed, and then it's easier for you, easier for me, and then easy to get the marks. Alright, then the next one, there's a GUI design. So there's 5 things they talk about. The design fits the program's intended use. That's just the look. So if your program is for a primary school, then the idea is you should have lots of like random, nice, colorful pictures and stuff. If it's for official company, then it will be a bit more just professional. So the look of your GUI. Appropriate comments. Appropriate components. So if you want to do gender, use radio buttons. If you want to choose like a department, use a combo box. If you want them to type in age, use a spin edit. So just using the correct components. When you work with dates, use a date and time picker. So using the correct component for whatever you need to do. So this is also important, especially if you've got a button like adding a new employee. A lot of you would want to just go input boxes. But that's a bad way of doing it, because you would want for him, when he chooses his gender, to use a combo box or a radio button. But we can't do that with an input box. So especially when you want to add a new animal or add a new employee or add a new guest, make another form that just pops up where the person can type everything in, and then we save it and we can go back to the original. Alright, so that you must have the correct components at all stages. You can't use an input box somewhere where a combo box would have been better or whatever. Alright, then ease of use. Just, is it easy and is it a logical flow? It shouldn't be, let's say there's 5 edit boxes that needs to be completed. Then you put 2 of them, then the button, then the other 3. Then the person's going to type in 2, click the button, error because the other 3 is not filled in. Then you realize, oh, I must type in all 5 first and then go back to the button. Okay, it's just not logical. So you put all 5 and then the button. So it's a nice flow of information. Clearly not, marked navigation. So that the next button says something like next. Nice comments exactly so you can know which button does what. And then you need a help. Each screen needs a help. So there needs to be a help button that if it's clicked, it can just be with a show message, whatever, where you just give some guidance as to what should happen. Alright. If you've got those 5 things, so those 5 things I can actually see on your screenshots. So when you do that navigation one that we've already done, this whole section, this 4 marks, I can give there as well, because I can see there how your GUI is going to look. So once you do that navigation, you get these marks there as well. Just make sure your GUIs comply with all of this. Then the next part, you'll have to draw a table. I suggest draw a table for this one. They say data input. So input interfaces, at least 2. So they say sources of input, keyboard, text file, array, or database. Now, generally, you already have at least 2. Because you must have a text file, you must have a database, and we're going to use keyboard somewhere. So you should have 3. And even if you leave out 1, but all 3 is required. So if you just do all 3, then you sort of do that part. They say data type. So this data type here refers to when you input something. So if you ask a person for his age, that you convert it to an integer. If you're asking for his salary, that you convert it to a double. Okay, it's your variables basically. Should be the correct data type. The format of the input. So you must indicate the format for the user somehow, with comments or with hints or something, where you show that gender should be either M or F, or male or female, or however you want to indicate. And same with if you want date and time, maybe the format of the date and time, if you don't use the picker. And then GUI component used. So you must just use the correct GUI component. So for doing those 4 things, you get 4 marks. And then the next part, you must also have input validation. So at least 4 different data types validated. 4 different data types. So we only use 5 data types. So you can leave out one, the others must be validated. So that is your character. So make sure that it's one character. Or a string, make sure that it's only strings. Or integer for whole numbers. Or double for currency and stuff, where it's got a fraction. Or then true or false for boolean. So somewhere you have to just validate for that. And then at least 4 inputs validated. So 4 of your inputs needs to be validated as well. Now what they say, you can validate for a null or empty field. So like when you ask a person to type in his details, that he can't leave his ID number blank. So you must make sure that he does enter something. And test if the value was selected in a selection component. So when you've got like a combo box, to make sure that they actually select one. You know, combo box starts with a message. And as soon as you click arrow down, you can choose from something. But if you don't click something, that message is still there. So you must just make sure that that original message isn't still there. And then associated error messages. So you must just tell me what will the error message be. If the person types in a string when it should be an integer, what will your error message be? And so forth and so forth. Alright. So what you will do with this, draw a table, make your first column the component. So you'll say there edit box, for argument's sake. Then make your next column the source. So for the edit box, your source will be a keyboard. You're going to type it with keyboard in. And then make your next column the data type. So there you can say, let's say it's for the person's name. So it will be an edit box. Source will be keyboard. Then the data type will be string. And then format, you'll say not applicable, because there's no format for surname. And then in the last, to make a 5th column to say if it's validated. So then you're just going to say, yes, you're going to validate it so it's only strings, only alphabet characters. And then in a 6th column, you say what the error message will be. Then there you'll say, you're only allowed to use alphabet letters, no special symbols. And then you go next one. Could be, so we start with the component, you can say combo box. And then you'll say the source will be also mouse select. And then your data type will be maybe string again. And then format will be maybe M or F. And then validation will make sure that it's a character, only one character, and that something is selected. And an error message, please select your gender. And so you list your different inputs for each component. So you can have a DB grid there. Your DB grid is a component. And the source is the database. And then your data type will be mixed. So you literally just say mixed, because you've got all the different fields with different. So you'll just say mixed. Your format not applicable, and then your validation also just not applicable. So we're not going to validate anything there. So you'll literally list all the components you'll use, and then fill in the columns. So you'll have those 6 columns. If you do this route, it's very easy for all of these marks. There's 8 marks. It's 4 marks for the top part and then 4 marks for the validation. So it's 8 marks for doing this table thing. Alright, then data processing. They ask us what processing will need to be done. And then for 4 marks, list at least 8 processes to be done. So you can use another paragraph underneath this table. You can say processing and do in Word, use those bullets. So you can see that you've got 8. You must just list 8 things that you will need to process. Now processing is, remember, that's any statement in Delphi basically. So processing that needs to be, you can say add an employee, remove an employee, update the employee, show the total, go to the next screen, sort the array, remove an item from the array. So you literally list any 8 things, 8 buttons or 8 things that your program will do. You list 8 of them and you get 4 marks by just listing what it's going to do. Not how or anything. You just say these 8 things will be done and you'll get 4 marks. But then there's the second part. Okay, so that's 4 marks. Then there's the next 4 marks that says how processing will be done. Supply algorithms, formulas, etc. So for 4 marks there, you have to describe 4 of them. So the 8 you listed now, you're going to choose 4 of them. And you're going to write me the algorithms for 4 of them. So try to use some of the ones that's got some significant formula in the sense where, let's say you had one where you're going to calculate tax, because there's a nice formula you can do, and show me the algorithm for that. Maybe if you're sorting, algorithm for sorting, so you just choose 4 of those ones and you write me the algorithm for 4 of them to get another 4 marks. And then the last part is just for output. Output, again, a table, but now just 3 columns. The one is component for output. The second one would be the format of the output. And the third one will be the data that is output. Maybe we can swap that around. So rather say component, then what is outputted, and then the format in which it's outputted. So you'll just have, I'll have a label. The thing that will be output is the user that logged in, and it is just strings. Or I'll have a date and time picker, which will display. Remember, this is now for output, so you must just differentiate between this one and the other one. Input is when we get information into the computer. So you'll see the component I set there. By input, I set the DB grid. Even though here DB grid's a display as well. So actually, what should have been more correct maybe for the top one is not to have DB grid there, but rather have maybe just say DB components, because it's a combination between our ADO connection and ADO table and all of them that has to do with the input part. But then the DB grid is actually more for display purposes. Alright, but then you'll just have these things. And if you do all of those things, that should give you 48 marks.